Today we face off Milotic V up against Sandaconda V. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sable Eyes. I'm here today with Jordan. How are we doing, Jordan?
Not too bad, thank you, Mitch.
That's good, mate. And you've just come off of a long night at the Limitless Invitational Tournament. What is it? It's 3:30 in the afternoon now, so you'd only just be waking up.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm barely functioning, but should be good enough to help you out the commentary in this game. And these are two cards that I don't know super well, but I think they both have a bit of potential.
They certainly do. We've got Milotic V on the left-hand side of the field and Sandaconda V fueled by Colossal on the right-hand side. I'm going to be going first. You've got the Milotic in the active, and there's a reasonable start here. We've got the Volcanion Prism and an Absol, an attachment as well. That seems like a pretty decent start. Realistically, for me, my first turn, I want to try and find a Snom if I can. Obviously wasn't able to do it there. It's just a pass over to Blake.
Yeah, so that's going to make your turn 2 pretty slow. Definitely not going to be able to pull off any attack next turn. But since you went first, you're not going to have too much pressure, I'd like to think. Obviously, it is possible that Blake could pull off a turn 2 Colossal, which is very similar to the good old turn 2 Vikavolt back in the day. Although I'd say it's a little harder to do because unlike Vikavolt, you actually have to get the energy into the discard pile in order to use that ability. So might be slightly awkward for Blake to get that off turn 2. But if he does, he's going to be in a very good position taking a very quick 2 prizes. So we'll see if his turn 1 is going to be good enough to try and go for that.
Yeah, at the moment we're seeing the Oranguru put a card to the top of the deck and then another quick ball coming down here. So no energy discarded as of this point, although we could be seeing there's a Jirachi here. And Jirachi, Jordan, I don't know if you've had a think about it, but Jirachi could actually be on the way out as an engine in the next format. It's still obviously good, but there's so many ways that Jirachi kind of falls behind. How do you feel about Jirachi going forward?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that a bit. Obviously, we've got cards like Tool Scrapper to get rid of escape boards, which is going to hinder the Jirachi engine a little bit. You've obviously also got the new Dragapult V, which is going to take prizes off Jirachis very easily. And of course, still the old classic counters, such as the Absol we see on your bench. In this matchup specifically, we're going to be seeing quite a few Absols, making Jirachi a little bit awkward to pull off. It's definitely still a very strong ability, but I can definitely agree with your point of view of saying it could drop off a little bit, and we see Blake is not actually able to take advantage of his Jirachi at all on that turn. It's going to be pretty hard to do with its 2 retreat costs. Make that 3 retreat costs.
Yep.
That's before you put a skateboard on. It'll still be a 2 retreat cost. So Blake's going to need pretty heavy access to switch, and looks like he's actually promoting the Jirachi from that Volcanion, so might be able to get off a pretty decent Celewish this turn.
Yeah, I thought I'd be generous and give Blake an opportunity to get that Jirachi off. The legitimate reasoning there is because if Blake does manage to get the Colossal into play, the last thing I want is this Milotic that has been powered up over 2 turns to get knocked out. I want to make it as difficult as possible for Blake to do that. Managed to find Skylar.
In play.
Yeah, exactly. The no Snom is a big problem. Managed to find Skylar, so we're getting some use out of those old XY full art Skylars. I think that one's actually a black and white one, I'm not sure. And using it to find a Professor's Research.
I think that might be the XY one. I can't remember. Maybe it is the black one. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah, I actually forgot that the Skylar was coming out again. That's a card that I've played a lot over my career, so it's definitely cool to see that card coming back. It looks like you've finally found yourself a quick ball, so you've at least managed to find a Snom before Blake has gotten a Colossal.
Well, actually, I'm not going to be going for a Snom here because part of the reason why I don't have a Snom in my hand at the moment is because I think up until that point my hand is 2 Frostmoths, and I desperately need to find some energy. So if I can't find a Snom, I might as well just detonate them both away, and we'll see what happens after this.
I have a feeling that you might only be playing 2 Frostmoth in your list. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That could be a problem.
That's alright, there's still a rod. It's fine.
Yeah, you're playing Recovery, and more importantly, you've got an active Milotic with 3 energy on it, so who even needs access to Snom when you can just get a boss's orders off of the Dedenne and just take a knockout in the Sandaconda. So it's got an extra 4 retreat costs, is that right?
That's true. So 3 plus 4 is 7.
Retreat costs.
So a lazy 460 damage for Milotic there to take the first 2 prizes. And now Blake is going to need to find another Sandaconda if he wants to get attacking in this game. He's replaced the stadium, which is good. He's got the fighting dojo, and there is Sandaconda and the professor's research.
So, because he is behind in prize cards, that stadium is going to be giving his fighting Pokemon, or Pokemon with fighting energy attached, plus 40 damage. Not that that matters, because I think he's knocking you out with pretty much any attack anyway, but definitely good to know. He still needs to find that Colossal this turn, and probably a switch to get that Jirachi out of the way, because I don't see him getting it out of the way manually with a 3 retreat cost.
Yeah, it's going to be a little hard to get that out. He's managed to find a Cynthia off of the Jirachi here, so a supporter for next turn. And Blake seeing a little bit of a problem here. The problems that Stage 2 decks tend to have, Jordan, is that every now and then you need specific pieces, and if they don't all arrive in the right order, then sometimes you have a bit of a problem. We're seeing Ninetales and Diancie coming down now, so Blake's bench is full and ready to go, but they need to see a Colossal pretty soon.
Well, that Ninetales is a very cool card in this deck. You'd think it might be a liability in this matchup due to the water weakness, but honestly, that Milotic is doing so much damage that I highly doubt at this point that is going to be a problem. Is this going to be a quick pull for an Eldegoss to get another boss's orders? Because if it is, that could be really powerful. But no, just going for the Snom plan to save. I respect that. If you were to get the boss's orders, there's a few things you could have done there. You could have either just taken a one-hit KO on that Sandaconda. I think it still would have been enough with a 5 retreat cost.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could even just take out the... I forgot what the basic Pokemon's called. It's the
Roly-Coly.
That's the one, Roly-Coly. I was going to say Rock and Roller. I'm like, nope, that's not
that's
right.
a different Roly-Rock.
So yeah, you could even knock that out, and that would put Blake in a pretty bad situation. But just taking the knockout on the Jirachi and setting up that Snom puts you in probably a bit of a safer situation for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I'm actually going to use Volcanion's ability again here to force Blake to remove one of the Pokemon on his bench. I don't really mind about the Jirachi. I can leave that in play as long as I want, because Jirachi with 3 retreat is a bit of a liability, so I prefer to get rid of something else from the bench. Blake giving up the Diancie there and going into another Stellar Wish. I've also got the Volcanion Prism ready to power up with the Snom on the bench, which means I can potentially take a knockout on Ninetales V, since that only has 200 HP. So that could potentially be a source of 2 more prizes for me. Blake's managed to grab the Escape Board, which he attaches to the Jirachi, so it now only has a 2 retreat cost because of the 2 Absols in play.
Yep, that's still pretty bad. I mean, he could retreat it. He could retreat it if he were to use up his entire Colossal ability, if he actually gets one into play. He could use that to retreat his Jirachi, but then you're not attacking, so that doesn't seem too ideal. I do believe as well that... Actually, I just realized that the Ninetales is kind of interesting in this matchup as an attacker, because if you have the Galar Mine in play, it does actually increase your own retreat cost as well, so he could actually use the Ninetales to get a cheeky knockout later on in the game as well, but for now it seems like the Sandaconda is going to be the attacker of choice. Blake is also getting that second Roly-Coly into play so that he doesn't fall prey to a boss's orders, but honestly, I feel like Blake would have needed to get a knockout on this Milotic this turn to stay in this game. I think if he gets down to 2 prizes before any retaliation, then it's going to be pretty hard for Blake to come back. So missing that knockout there is definitely a big deal. And you've also found that rod, which I feel like was the one thing that was going off with Blake, is that you haven't found that yet. Yeah, so I'm in a position now where I'm pretty much got everything that I need. As long as I can get the Frostmoth into play, I should be fine to lock this game up. I managed to also grab another one of those buckets to grab 2 more water energy, which means that, again, I could potentially gust something up with the Volcanion, or I could just attach and then prepare myself to take a knockout on the Ninetales in the next turn or so. Taking the knockout on the Jirachi finally this turn isn't that big of a deal, since there's only 3 prize cards left, and that's what I'm going to do. So now Blake has an opportunity, finally, to take a knockout. 1 more manual attachment will do the job here. It's funny that both of you have played this entire game off of manual attachments, except you went first, so you got the first knockout and set Blake behind in manual attachments. So these are 2 decks that are not functioning in any way the way that they're meant to. But I think that just shows the power of these two Pokemon on their own. I mean, obviously you going first was a huge deal, but it just shows that Milotic just having 3 energy on it, even without all the support stuff. Milotic with 2 Absol on the bench is a pretty big wrecking machine.
It certainly is. Like, pretty much every Pokemon in the format that has any sort of attack power is going to have 2 or more retreat cost, apart from things like Dragapult VMAX, which is obviously coming out soon, but one of those things with Absol, when you continue to add those retreat costs, makes it very, very difficult to deal with. Although I think I've been Marnied here last turn, and from memory I had the game in hand with another Water Energy and a Boss's Orders. Now both of those are on the bottom of the deck, and I've got to see what I can do. The Absol's in the active, that's not going to be any help. I'm probably going to need to attack with a Volcanion this turn, unless I can find myself a Frostmoth and a Milotic, and a few energies as well. This is probably going to be a bit of a difficult turn for me.
Yeah, obviously the easiest way to win the game would be to just get the Boss's Orders and knock out the Ninetales for game, but I'd say that in this situation, the more realistic way for you to win, if you were to do so this turn, would be to find a Frostmoth or Milotic and actually just take a knockout on the active, since you are on 2 prizes now. You get the switch into the Volcanion, so even just half hitting the Sandaconda with the Volcanion isn't a terrible strategy, because Blake actually still doesn't have his Colossal into play, so this Volcanion Prism could very realistically get 2 attacks off, which interestingly enough I don't think would actually get the knockout on Sandaconda.
No, it wouldn't, but that's...
it'd be pretty close.
It's going to be very close. Be 20 short. I managed to find the Frostmoth finally. There's another Milotic and an energy as well onto that Milotic on the bench. I don't know if you noticed, Jordan, but the Professor's Research that I played discarded Eldegoss and my last Boss's Orders, so
Ooh.
I'm not going to be gusting with anything other than Volcanion now, and it looks like I'm just going to go for the attack. 100 on the active and 20 to everything on the bench.
So did you only have... Wait, were you only missing an energy away from winning the game with Boss's Orders?
I was, yeah. I got Marnied into Boss's Orders, Eldegoss, and Professor's Research.
And didn't you say that there was a Boss's Orders in your hand that got Marnied to the bottom?
Yep.
Does that mean there might be one left in deck?
There might be. There might be. I'm not quite sure. I think so.
Okay.
I think so. But it's at the bottom of the deck, so I've got a long way to go to find it.
That's true. And to be fair, you're probably not going to need it, because that Blake's going to need to attack with... Pokemon V for the majority of this game, I imagine. I don't see him attacking with non-GXs to take his last 4 prizes, so realistically you just need to power up that Milotic and you will have the game locked up on whichever Pokemon Blake has in the active position. You're realistically like 1 energy retrieval away from winning the game, although due to that Galar Mine you actually would have to find a switch as well potentially to get this Volcanion out of the active, because I believe it does have a 3 or equals 5 retreat cost now. So it'd be a little awkward to get him out of the active, since you can't use Frostmoth to attach energy to your active Pokemon. So Blake could potentially have a bit of time here, but to be fair, Blake really needs to start taking prizes. Probably get a knockout in this Volcanion. Hope you miss energy for a turn, and then maybe Gust kill the Frostmoth, or the Milotic would be his path to victory. But that all revolves around him actually getting a Colossal into play, which still hasn't happened.
Yeah, we've noticed the stage 1 has appeared on the field on the right hand side there. There's a switch as well, so the switch looks like he's going to be the way to deal with this Volcanion for a turn. We'll just chuck the Oranguru up and pass, and I feel like at this point there's almost nothing that Blake can realistically do. Professor's Research there from me getting rid of the rest of the cards in my hand. We'll just dig down and try and find that Gust. A couple of energy extra would be great. And I'll be able to attack here with Volcanion to take a knockout and 20 on everything else on the bench. And there's 2 extra energy as well. So I feel like this game's pretty much locked up now. It's just a matter of time.
This Volcanion attack is actually super perfect, because due to the 20 damage on the Oranguru, we'll get the knockout on that, doing exactly 120. And more importantly, it'll put 20 damage onto his bench Sandaconda, which means Blake can't kill both the Milotic and the Volcanion Prism. Both of them now in range to take the knockout on that Sandaconda. So no matter which Pokemon Blake knocks out, if he has access to Boss's Orders, the other one will be able to get the knockout. So he's going to actually have to find another Sandaconda. It looks like that's not going to be happening.
Yeah.
So he's going to call it the end there.
He's decided, yep, probably no way that I can realistically go about winning this one, especially when you don't find Rare Candy and your Stage 2 in the same hand. And just think how different that game could have been if Blake managed to get a Colossal in the first turn. It would have been a very, very different situation. So that the curse of the Stage 2 decks continues, but you can see, especially when the Sandaconda started attacking, just how good it could potentially be. So hopefully, for Blake's sake, and for the sake of the content, then we managed to see Colossal come into play this game.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how, I guess, slow that game was for both of you, because it's not very often when you see two decks that are using an energy acceleration method having to just manually attach against each other. And I guess you were just, as I said before, very fortunate that you just happened to be the player going first in that game, so you were always one attachment ahead, which usually isn't a defining factor in a matchup like this, but in a game where both players are bricking, just having more energy in play than your opponent is obviously a pretty big deal. So I imagine that the game won't go like that again, or at least hopefully not, because that would be a little unfortunate.
It'd be underwhelming.
Hopefully we'll see at least one of these two decks set up, and if it does, it'll probably have a big advantage over the other.
Yeah, exactly. And Blake obviously having the advantage now of going first. He's got the Roly-Coly in the active. I've managed to get myself an Absol, but it's just a pass from Blake on turn 1. So
wait, did Blake pass, or did he opt for you to go first?
No, I believe he passed.
That's pretty bad.
I think so.
Well, I guess we'll find out by whether you play a supporter card or not this turn.
Well, I'm just trying to count his cards in hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, he's drawn a card there, so he's drawn and passed.
That is unfortunate. I was really just about to say I wonder if it's actually better for this deck to go first or second, because I feel like if you go first, the chances of you getting a turn 2 Colossal is pretty unrealistic to do so without a supporter turn 1, whereas if you go second, then you get that turn to play a supporter, set up your board a bit, and potentially try and find yourself that Colossal turn 2. Obviously, the downside to that is you're giving your opponent that luxury of going first and setting themselves up a bit, but no matter what decision is correct, it's definitely not ideal to go first and draw pass.
No, certainly not, and that is what Blake has done. I just played Professor's Research there to draw some extra cards, and the new Capture Energy coming down here into play will allow me to search my deck for a basic Pokemon and put it onto the bench. It kind of reminds me of the old Call Energy, Jordan, from back in the day, being able to search out Pokemon without using a item card.
Yeah, when you told me about this card just before, I was kind of hoping it was going to be exactly like that old Call Energy, which I think would have been really cool in this format, since you can't play supporters turn 1. That would effectively act as a supporter you could play turn 1, but that's a card that would have been really, really useful for you in the last game where you were struggling a bit with setup. Here it's certainly not bad. Wouldn't say it was like a requirement for you to have a good turn, because you already had your Snom to play, which is good, but we see Blake there was just holding on to the Professor's Research, unable to play it due to the new turn 1 rules, so it's just going to drop the escape board down. I'm assuming that Roly-Coly typically only has a 1 retreat cost, but of course it's a 4 retreat cost now, thanks to the Absol and the Galar Mine, so he's not going to be escaping with the skateboard anytime soon. Just going to be attaching to the benched Sandaconda. No Colossal in play for him. If you can get that a couple energy and a switch, then I feel like you're just going to run away with this game again, looking at Blake's board.
Yeah, and in this game here, I've actually managed to set my board up the way that it's supposed to be in the early game. I managed to get the Frostmoth down. I've got an energy already attached to a Milotic. I've got myself a Volcanion as well, so if I manage to find an extra water energy, I can gust that Sandaconda up, although, to be fair, I might not want to. Might want to just get that Roly-Coly out of the way. Although, I will say, one of the toughest things about this deck is that I'm going to need to find a switch. Because if I don't find a switch, then my Absol has 3 retreat because of the Galar Mine anyway. So if I can't get out of the active, none of this really matters.
Yeah, Galar Mine is certainly a double-edged sword, and it's definitely important to be playing very high copies of switching cards, especially when you're playing both Galar Mine and Frostmoth. I'd almost like to see cards like Warp Energy could be pretty cool in this deck, but you found the switch, which is even better, so Milotic is going to be coming into the active and taking a knockout on that Roly-Coly, which I think is a stronger play than knocking out the Sandaconda, since Blake just can't do anything now.
Yeah, he can attack with the first attack for 30 damage or something similar. Although, to be fair, with the martial arts dojo, that'll actually be 70, which is not necessarily a bad number for 1 energy, but certainly not the position that he'd want to be in, especially when you compare board states. It's a pretty rough spot for Blake right now.
I think the only way that Blake realistically has a chance to win this game is, well, A, he needs to get a Colossal next turn, and B, he probably needs to not be knocked out this turn. Now, currently, his Sandaconda has 5 retreat costs due to those 2 Absols, and that is definitely enough to get the knockout, even without Galar Mines in play. So I feel like Blake would also need to switch into a Pokemon that either won't be knocked out, or maybe just a Jirachi to sacrifice and set up his board a bit more. But if he just has to leave the Sandaconda in the active and go down 3 prizes, I question whether he's going to have a chance to come back. And it looks like he is going to go ahead and use that attack for 30 damage, plus should be another 40 from that dojo. So I believe it should be 70 on the active. There we go.
There it is.
And I don't know the text of that attack, but Blake is an extra energy attached to his Sandaconda now. So
yep, so that grabs one out of the discard pile. So a nice little accelerating attack. That's like a year-old Volcanion back in the day when you used to use Power Heater or whatever it was called. I can't remember now. But there's not a huge amount that can be done about that for Blake now. The Sandaconda has been knocked out, and there's a Roly-Coly in the active with 2 fighting energy on it. Funnily enough, I think because of the stadium in play, if Blake does manage to find Colossal here, which he has, he's actually going to be able to knock out my Milotic here. So he'll do 130 plus an extra 4 with the Martial Arts Dojo, and because of the 70 that's already on there, that's going to be a knockout onto Milotic. That's a very impressive knockout, although it is going to cost him his stage 2, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely needs this Colossal to survive, or at least get another one into play next turn. So it's like Blake's changing his Pokemon communication might be prioritizing a second.
So what's happened here is he's forgotten that he needed to use his ordinary rod first, and since we're testing, there's no point in faffing around with rule sharking each other. Just grab those Pokemon back out, put them in, because obviously it is better to get a Roly-Coly here. So guarantee that with the ordinary rod, and that means that now there's going to be at least an opportunity to get another Colossal into play next turn.
And it is also worth noting that Absol's ability does actually only work for basic Pokemon, and Colossal is an evolved Pokemon. So there's actually nothing on your board right now that is increasing the retreat cost of this Colossal. Unfortunately for Blake, Colossal already has a 4 retreat cost.
Yeah, exactly. It's already Milotic's already dealing 210 damage to it anyway. So
if this was a different Pokemon, then maybe this would be a strategy for dealing with Milotic as attack with your stage 1 or 2 support Pokemon, but in this situation, not going to be too good for Blake because Colossal is a very chunky boy.
Certainly is, and we've got another one of those capture energies coming out here. Just having a look through the deck, I don't think there's anything else I realistically want on my bench apart from another Milotic, but I remember there is one in my hand, so I'll just play that one down. Instead of grabbing it from the deck, just use it to search, and then I can use the bucket to find myself a couple of extra energy as well, and attach those to Milotic or to Volcanion Prism, or I can even hold on to 1 or 2 of them depending on what I'm expecting to see from Blake next turn. I think I'll just put them down onto the Milotic. That's probably the safest thing, because that means I don't need to find a switch next turn to attack. I only need to find an energy if Blake does manage to take a knockout on my Milotic.
Yeah, I feel like it's just so unrealistic that anything can happen here, because Blake's best play, theoretically, would be to get himself another Colossal into play, use it to power up his Sandaconda on the bench, switch into the active, and take a knockout on your Milotic. I think that's pretty much the only play that would give Blake a chance at winning this game. But now that you've got Chuanji on the bench, Milotic, even if Blake does get that perfect hand, he's going to have to also hope that you miss an energy. And that is not super realistic. He doesn't even need to find a switch or anything to power up the Milotic on the bench and then switch into the active. 2 energy is enough that he can just attach to the active without even using Frostmoth. So I think that was a reset stamp from Blake, so that's definitely one of the most important cards he's going to find here. But
yep, step one.
He also needs to actually get a knockout on your active while also hoping you miss an energy. So we'll see how it goes.
These 6 cards for Blake here need to be Energy, Switch, Rare Candy, Colossal, and 2 others. That Oranguru is not any of those 4 cards that we mentioned, so that's no good.
It could become one.
It could potentially become one, that's true. So we'll see what has happened here. There's a Jirachi, so potentially could be seeing an extra Jirachi here, although if he's using the switch to go into Jirachi, it means he needs to have another switch as well. There's an energy, but the Diancie coming down means that there's probably not anything in there. I'm not sure. It looks like it's just a pass from Blake. So I'll be continuing on here with my turn. I've got the bucket to grab some extra water energy. At least for Blake's sake, he's not losing this turn, although he's going to make it very, very difficult for him to win the game next turn, now that I've got 2 powered attackers.
Yeah, I feel like that attachment to the Milotic there, I think that was checkmate. I can't currently think of any way that Blake can put anything into the active and not be knocked out by one of those 2 Milotics. I don't know Blake's list right now, so maybe he's got some crazy card in there that I don't know about that can win him this game, but well, he's still playing, so maybe he's got some cool strategy up his sleeve.
Perhaps we've got the research coming down here, so he's going to get the most cards to look at. We've only actually seen 1 rare candy from Blake in this entire set, and I know that he plays a fair chunk of them, so still not out of the woods when it comes to Colossal. There could very realistically be a knockout here. But the question is that knockout going to be enough? Blake got the Ninetales there. There's a switch into Jirachi, so looks like it might be all over for Blake here. That doesn't seem like a move that's going to progress his board state very much, because now he's going to need to find another switch to get into another Sandaconda, but there's the rare candy, so maybe he's got it.
Maybe he could even have the obviously he has the Colossal, he could even have an escape board and potentially even use that Colossal to retreat his Jirachi if he had to. Obviously that would mean he's not going to have access to an attack though. Once again though, I don't see what
no, there's the concession. There you go. He just wanted to get the Colossal off. He just wanted to be able to use the ability.
Just wanted to end the game with a Colossal in play. That is respect.
Yeah, and fair enough. And it's always a shame when this happens, because I do think that Blake's deck is an interesting one, but when it just doesn't work on camera, it's always a bit of a shame. Anyway, thank you, Jordan, for coming along.
Not a problem. It was a decent game at least.
Yeah, we at least got to show off Milotic a little bit. So there you have it. Wasn't necessarily the most even matchup we've ever shown, but it was definitely a good one if you were thinking about Milotic. I think Milotic's the one of these two that is probably more likely to be successful, but you never know when it comes to Pokemon cards. Thank you to Jordan for commentating once again, and thanks to Blake for coming through with another interesting list. We'll be checking that one out tomorrow, so make sure you jump on tomorrow for that one. If you want to be updated as soon as it goes live, then consider clicking the subscribe button if you haven't already. There's a button just here to help you do that. Over here there are some videos of other things that YouTube thinks you might like, and down the bottom is a playlist for more of our pre-release content for Rebel Clash. Thanks very much everyone, and we'll see you all next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.